Alright, I'm back with another Outriders video, and Evie's on the way to make her cameo, as I can hear right now. There she is. This will probably be my last Outriders video for a while, because I've pretty much beaten everything possible in the demo, and outside of farming for the remaining 9 legendaries I need for the next 40 to 400 hours, given the current drop rates in World Tier 4. I'm kind of out of stuff to do. I have maxed all the World Tiers on all 4 characters. I have obviously maxed the level cap, which happens pretty quickly after you finish all the main campaign missions and the side missions. And then I've even, in my farming with each character, I have kind of geared out builds using at least blue gear, which will give you at least some amount of perks, or it's like double charges on this, or an added effect on that, which the demo allows you to do, which is good. But I figured I would kind of just talk about my overall impressions of the demo and how they have evolved over time before I kind of put this on ice until we get closer to release here, where there might be more info. I started out, I think, a lot more negative than I ended up, and I think there were a few reasons for that. I started with Pyromancer on PC, and I think the game just feels better and runs better on console than it does PC. Granted, this, if you have like the world's most perfect PC and you love PC gaming for absolutely everything, maybe that's not true. But for me, the 4K HDR on PS5 and the PS5 controller, seems probably true for Xbox, but it feels like the better way to play the game. Maybe some of that could be solved by a controller on PC, and that could alleviate some of the issues, because I just don't think the game controls as well in third person with the mouse and keyboard. But that's kind of a matter of personal preference. I just think it plays and looks really well on PS5. So I've had a better time since I did that. Starting on Pyromancer, I think most people would agree that, at least in the demo, Pyromancer is probably the weakest, weirdest class. It's just so much easier to kind of gear up the other ones and do these really hard hitting builds. The Trickster, I think, is the one. If you're just going to do one, the Trickster's the one I recommend everybody try, because it's just so fun. The time slowing abilities and the teleporting and the Vorpal blade and whatever it's called. Devastator's probably the next most fun. Technomancer, I think, has the most overall DPS. In my captain farming, you can just end up deleting that captain with your salvo turret skill. It's better than, I think, anything else in the game, even auto shotgun spam. You can combine it with auto shotgun spam to delete it even faster. And then Pyromancer, Pyromancer was the last class I tried on console, and back when I was using Pyromancer on PC, I was still trying to use cover. I still didn't really understand the mechanics of heal on kill and all that kind of stuff. Pyromancer, it took me a while, but I got to the point where people were like, "Oh, well, that's a class you need to use cover for. Your skills aren't up enough, and you can't heal the same way as other classes." I didn't find that to be true, even in World Tier 5. I think there's a way to do it where, if you more carefully manage your skills instead of just spamming them like kind of the other classes, you can just spam them whenever you want, essentially. If you more closely manage when you're using them, for instance, you always want to save the life ripping skill when you're really low on health, rather than just using it as soon as it's up, because it both will get you health, and then if you kill the person you did it to, will get you more health because they're marked. So that's just things you learn as you go. I found Pyromancer is really good at interrupting bosses. Almost all of its moves are interrupts. So all the bosses that are trying to spam skills, I beat. I was under-leveled for the Goss, is that his name? The electric guy, and I beat him first try just because he could never get off any of his skills. Same for the boss who always heals himself. If you could just constantly interrupt them, then you're golden, and that's something Pyromancer is good at. So even Pyromancer, in the end, I found was a very good class. And I think my impressions of the game were shaped by using that first and not really know how to play. And some of the other stuff I've kind of let go. I'm not very enamored by the story and the voice acting. It's very early to judge that, I admit, and I should probably go down every conversation tree branch, and I should give the game a chance to open up more. I think the prologue does a very bad job of kind of setting up the world and storytelling with its really intermittent shaky cam cutscenes and things like that. But this is something I think could improve as time goes on. So I'm not going to fully say like I don't like any of these characters. I don't like the story. I will say they didn't hook me initially, and yet I know I have to give it more of a chance, and I'm not gonna fully judge it now. I will say something that bothers me that is not probably going to go away is the weirdness of this open world, in that it is not really an open world at all. This first zone kind of exemplifies this pretty clearly, and I don't imagine it's going to change much. It's how hyper instanced everything is, where you can't run a single side mission without having to load into the specifically instance area for that side mission with some sort of door opening cutscene or some sort of gap jumping cutscene, and like it's like the clumsiest possible way of like hiding these loading screens, and like it's just very weird to go back to a time when like there's loading screens between like literally everything, like opening a door to talk to someone in a room for requests or moving on to the next area after like a tunnel or something. It just feels very dated and very not like how most other games work now. A game like Destiny has instancing in various areas, but it's like if you can ride your sparrow from one thing to another and it'll like glitch for half a second, and that's a new instance, and it matches you with new players kind of instantly. And that's how most games like this work. And it's even weirder because when you're playing solo, it doesn't change that. Like you could be playing entirely single player, and it's all exactly the same. And they've said out loud that this is their solution for co-op, and the reason this exists is because it's so they can group all the co-op people together, so people aren't like fracturing instances. But even they admit in like the interviews I've read that like this is not really an optimal system. It was just kind of the least worst option. And I think this is one thing I really don't like about the structure of the actual world. And if we're going to keep seeing this, it all feels a bit on the rails. Like the areas themselves are really narrow and just these very small hallways with very little room for exploration other than like go this way a little bit. Squeaking your rabbit. I'd like go this way for a chest, or go this way for some resources or something, but exploration is pretty low. And I don't think that's going to improve too much. I think we can get some more diverse zones as time goes on. I complained about the aesthetics of it being brown and gross and weird and just kind of boring. I know we're going to get to new zones and things, so I'm not going to judge. That's another thing I'm not going to judge too early here. So I will wait and see how that develops. The aesthetics of the gear is another thing I don't like. I think there's a way to do like corrupted human weapons by an alien force type weapon. Like I think there's a way to do that right. It just doesn't work in 90% of the weapons I've seen. I think I've seen 2 good legendaries, and the rest are like some of the ugliest legendaries I've ever seen. Some people like the style. I've heard people say they like the aesthetics. It's different. One thing I don't love right now is how all the classes have the same armor. And I know that will split once there's like legendary sets, because I know like the legendary Devastator set is unique to Devastator. But it will be a little weird if that's the only place it splits, because otherwise the 4 classes just look so samey, and like it's hard to think of another game where armor is the same across all classes. Like that doesn't really happen in Destiny or Diablo or games like this. Like having unique armor is kind of having distinctive classes other than just the skill difference is kind of essential. Maybe like epic armor and more legendary armor will solve that problem, so we'll see what happens, and maybe there are better looking guns to come in the future, because man, that aesthetic. But fundamentally, like that's the things I don't like. But a lot of this is stuff that could get better in time. But fundamentally, I mean, the game is doing something right if I am addicted to farming some pointless legendary. Like, yeah, you can carry over the mods and whatever, but like there's no real point to doing this. But like the fact that they have created a loop where you can spend 20 hours creating the hyper fast captain killing farm build for a demo, that is pretty impressive, because usually in demos or betas or whatever like this, you don't get that kind of thing. Like the early loot game and all these other rival games are nothing. It's like it's all trash gear. You can never really gauge how the final setup of gear is going to feel in any sense based on like your early drops in most games. Here, where they're putting like what would be essentially exotic Destiny perks on blue gear, like double charges of this, like double the damage of that, like things like that. You can already kind of get a sense of optimizing your builds, and then having a legendary farm to some extent, even if drop rates are terrible, you can get your hands on at least a couple of those and see how kind of wild those can be, and they're very good. And that is something that is, I think, was very important to get across in the demo, and it did in a way that I have not seen from many other games. And fundamentally, like, the loot is good, but also combat is good using that loot. I don't really like third-person shooters, generally speaking. I put a lot of time into tons of third-person games over the years. Gears of War, Mass Effect, The Division, and they're fine, and I'll play them. It's just not my preference. I prefer games like Borderlands and Destiny, but this is good. Mostly, it's good because you don't use cover, and once you figure out not to use cover and to just kind of tactically move around enemies hiding in cover and kill them to get your health back, that's where the game really picks up. And once that was kind of discovered, the whole system kind of really opened the door for me, and that's when I really started having fun. Really, kind of understood how to fight tactically. And we'll see how it goes with the world tiers. I'm worried we could get to a world tier, like I said earlier, that okay, now you have to take cover, and it's going to turn into a much more kind of boring slog if everything is one-shotting you. But I'm hoping it's balanced to the point where that won't actually be how it works. If they can maintain this style of combat, the hyper aggression, heal on kill kind of thing, that would be very good. And finally, I think this game benefits from there being pretty much no pressure on it. I said in an article I wrote today that this is an Anthem where BioWare spent all their resources for 3 to 5 years developing this massive new IP separate from Dragon Age and Mass Effect, and everyone had the sky highest of expectations for it. Nor is it Crystal Dynamics Avengers, where they're talking about this 2 to 4 year plan of constantly releasing heroes and all this stuff, and then that clearly is not going so hot. There really are no expectations on Outriders. It's a completely new IP. It's a relatively small studio, even if they have the backing of Square Enix. And they are saying outright they do not have any crazy long-term plans like that. I think they're downplaying themselves a bit. I think if this game is a hit, that they will add more content to it. I just, it's not going to be live service in the sense that it's the season of Outriders and constantly added content. But yeah, if it's a hit, they'll do DLC. They'll add more guns. That stuff will happen. They're not just gonna throw it away if it's a hit. But there's no expectation that yes, I must play Outriders for the next 2,000 hours. If I get 200 hours out of Outriders, which is easy to see at this point, even just given what we know already, the 4 classes and how gear scales to 50 right now, that's fine with me. I don't need another forever game, so if I can get a few hundred hours of looting out of this, and who knows, if it really is stellar, if it really is Diablo, man, I don't even want to know how many thousands of hours I have into Diablo. So put a Paragon system in there, make farming for gear even more nuanced and fun. And I mean, who knows what the potential cap is. We haven't seen the end game. We have seen previews of the end game, but that is always where these kind of games are made or broken, and almost no games get the end game right at launch. We'll see what happens with Outriders. I think we've gotten a taste of what it could look like, and it could look very good based on the way gearing and combat currently works, but we'll have to see. Overall, I'm very, very satisfied with the demo, and it has increased my anticipation for Outriders to a significant degree. The issues I have, some of them I'm waiting to see on. Some seem like they will not be easy to fix, like the instancing, but overall, yeah, I absolutely want to play more of this, to the point where I'm going to probably keep farming for random legendaries, even though it's pointless and the drop rates are terrible, just to play it because I enjoy it. So we'll see. Let me know what you thought of it if you've been playing it in the comments. The demo is live for the indefinite future. It's not even going away when the game comes out. It's going to permanently act as a preview for the game, which I think is a very good idea. Still think they should just cut the prologue because that makes a bad first impression, but I doubt it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. We'll see if there's any more breaking news over the next month about Outriders. If I get all the legendaries in my next 200 hours of farming, maybe I'll do a video on how those work, but I'm not really expecting that to happen, so we'll see. But yep, for now, it's back to Destiny for a bit, and I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that. trying to get the subs up, so recommend the videos. I don't know all the promotional things to say, but you know what to do. But thanks for watching. Evie is gone, but she said hi earlier, so alright, see you guys.